Welcome back to the program, and now it's time for our Political Insiders panel. Not the ABC Insiders, the Campaign Confidential Insiders. Joining me tonight is former Labour advisor Darin Baker and former Liberal MP Jason Falinski, both here on the desk with me tonight. How good is it to all be here? Now, there's a lot of commentary around the Liberals campaign at the moment and whether they have done enough to convince voters that they are better than Labour and that it is worth making a change. And, gentlemen, I want to start with this piece that the Australian's editor-at-large, Paul Kelly, had over the weekend, which highlighted that the opposition is running out of time. And he wrote, "The upshot is that Peter Dutton entered the campaign looking underdone on policy and short on vision, shunning tax and industrial relations reform, avoiding cultural war issues, talking up geostrategic dangers, but still not releasing his defence budget policy, preaching a better budget bottom line, but devoid of detail, and weak on an economic growth and productivity-enhancing agenda." Jason, I'll start with you on the Liberal side here. Is that a fair indictment? Did Peter Dutton and the coalition come into this election having done the homework to win?
That's a fair indictment. I don't think we actually set up the table for the narrative. We didn't spend enough time explaining to people why they are suffering a cost of living crisis, which is the out-of-control government spending in Canberra. And I think, therefore, we went into an election with people not really understanding what was the cause of their problems.
And Darin, I mean, it's still 13 days until we go to the polls. Pre-polling opens on Tuesday. Not a lot of time left, but we've seen things happen, big things happen before in 2019, and other times when the narrative can change and suddenly things happen. But what do you make more broadly of the Liberals' campaign so far? And has Labour just sort of gotten lucky with this?
Oh, they've been very lucky. They've not been the story. The story has been Dutton, Trump, or Dutton and Trump the whole way through. And to go to 2019 is instructive, I think, that it's a bit like, to use a soccer analogy, the worst place to be is 2-0 up because you don't know whether to attack or defend.
Right.
Shorten was 2-0 up, and I think Dutton was 2-0 up. And I don't think he thought he might be able to just do a bit of Me Tooism and just get over the line, and enough people, he already had that lead, and it hasn't worked out for him in the same way it didn't work out for Shorten. So if they had to put more on the table early on, people would have said, oh, you're eating into your own lead. It's a really difficult position to be in opposition when you're in front. And they were in front, no two ways about it. But when that momentum starts to shift, it's very difficult to arrest that slide.
Well, one of the things that slide, Jason, has been about has been a drift of many coalition voters, Liberal voters, national voters, to minor right parties, whether it's One Nation or some of the other, conservative or right-wing independents. Has the fact that they hadn't had any sort of policy around things like tax and migration, they came very late to the party with, that's hurt them on that right flank, whereas the left seems to be much more disciplined. If you vote for the Greens, you're probably going to wind up preferencing back to Labour again.
Well, now you have trumpets of parrots or something that are now preferencing the Teals.
Yeah.
So yes, as a political movement, not a political party, we need a renewal around sense of purpose and what we're trying to do. So the left is far more coordinated, much larger ecosystem. That needs to be exposed. All of those mechanical parts of campaigning machinery needs to happen, which we haven't been doing. But the second part about what you're saying is, while ever the Liberal Party frames issues in terms of culture wars, then we lose. When we frame them in terms of economic issues, we win.
Interesting, because it's a little bit different to America with that. But, hey, I want to move on to another story, and Darin hits you with this one here. This was a big story this week, and that was Russia's rumoured request to base long-range aircraft in Indonesia. Now, Labour came out and said, oh, this is ridiculous, Peter Dutton, you're just running a scare campaign. But if you look into it, Indonesia has an awful long relationship with Moscow going back to the Cold War, and as recently as February, the Russian defense chief Sergei Shoigu went to visit with Indonesian President Prabowo. This idea that there wouldn't be some sort of cooperation here seems a bit daft, and the denials around it feel almost a bit like saying, oh, no, he never fell off the stage, the Prime Minister never fell off the stage.
But when your chips are down, like Dutton's chips are down, sometimes it just, nothing has gone his way. He has not copped a break the whole campaign. He's tried to start an issue, tried to blow it up, and it's come back and blown up in his face. It's just been that kind of campaign for Dutton. Doesn't really matter what he's tried, it hasn't worked, and it's blown up and made him look bad. I don't know whether there's any validity to this claim or not, but certainly the way it's come out and played out in the media, Dutton does not come out looking better than before mentioning that incident.
And yet, though, this incident, when I heard about it, I spoke to a lot of security experts. They said, look, even if it's not in the specifics, in the general tone, this is where this is going because Indonesia wants to help Russia, to help China change the architecture of the Pacific. Now, this felt to me a lot like that moment in 2022, just before the election, when Scott Morrison and the Solomon Islands did that deal with China. Everybody heaped a huge amount of negative commentary around Scott Morrison saying he'd lost this. Why isn't this, which happens on Anthony Albanese's watch, falling more against Labor?
Well, James, you're absolutely right, because of narrative. Because the narrative hasn't been set up that this government has been weak and ineffectual in foreign affairs and defence matters. So when this news drops, it drops into the narrative that Peter Dutton is falling behind in the election. And so it's used to add to that story rather than the real story, which is that this government, on this government's watch, we have lost key allies and lost really important bipartisan agreement in our region.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it's terrifying, and we haven't heard enough about that. You are right. But, guys, I want to go on to something else that I just love here. It's the Greens and Adam Bant.
We're all going to be on the same page on the Greens.
Oh, well, I know, because let's have some furious agreement here.
Should I defend Adam Bant?
Yeah, all yours. And the trumpet of Patriots backing Adam Bant in the field.
That would be great. Hey, but Adam Bant also now wants Treasury and Anthony Albanese's Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to help prepare for a hung parliament. I love this. He wants departmental leaders to give them briefings on overhauling negative gearing. Well, they can just use the one they gave to Jim Chalmers, and the capital gains tax discount as part of an unprecedented green book. Have a listen to this.
We have asked the Treasury to start focusing on reforms to negative gearing and capital gains tax discount for people with more than one investment property, in addition to their family home.
Darin, you had a soccer analogy there, or should I say football analogy earlier. I want to give
he gets a yellow card for that.
He does. You get a free kick.
Or a red card if he's a communist.
He's always got the red card. It's in his wallet. But Darin, I mean, this is ridiculous, isn't it?
I think it's actually pretty funny that they're asking for a green book. It's kind of clever, and I think they're playing into those seats that they have. Melbourne, there's lots of renters. Brisbane, Ryan, Griffith. It's a play to the people who voted for them 3 years ago. Max Chandler-Mather has made housing his big deal that he talks about. And I think they have some credibility amongst younger voters, those who are trapped in rental, can't afford to buy a home, and they've managed to create a story that negative gearing, capital gains tax, that's the reason why people are trapped and blocked out of the market. So they're playing to their base.
They're playing to their...
But whether anyone takes it seriously, apart from their own voters, it's probable that they won't.
Well, I feel actually like this might actually make Labor people who were thinking of voting Green vote Labor myself, because I think that...
I think a lot of people are annoyed that the Greens blocked the housing bill. Whether or not you love the details of the housing bill, the fact that they blocked it for so long, I think that rankled some of their supporters, because in the end, their supporters sympathise with Labor. They don't want the Greens to replace them as the kind of centre-left or left alternative.
And we know the Greens are just blockers. Now, Jason, I want to come to you on this one here because, our friends, the Teals, Teals. I think you might have a thing or two to say about the Teals. Anyway, they say they're for honesty, integrity and transparency. But as revealed in The Australian, workers have been caught putting up signs on power poles, which is illegal for Teal candidates in Sydney. And when confronted, they allegedly became aggressive. Have a look at this.
It is illegal to do this. Okay? You're paid to do the job? Good. Okay.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, no.
Respect.
And this story, I think, was broken by my good friends at the Daily Telegraph, but this really, along with everything else we've seen from the cork flute thefts in Victoria to a lot of other behaviour, So much for politics done differently, hey, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the best community movement money can buy, right? Now we've got foreign workers coming in, putting these things up on poles. And, of course, more concerning was the links that the Smart Energy Council has with forced labour in China. The more you peel back on this stuff, the more serious it looks that the backers of this movement. And I really encourage the Australian media to have a closer look, because if it were either the Labor Party or the Liberal Party, quite frankly, this would be a major scandal.
Absolutely right.
Can I just say very quickly, though? I live in Wentworth. No.
Go on.
You cannot find a power pole in Wentworth without a sign on it from one of the three major parties.
Well, there you go.
And they're all in it. They're all in it up to their elbows. I accept what you say about politics done differently, and therefore the pitch is different for community independence. But in terms of the reality, you can't find a power pole without it.
But did Labor pay for foreign workers to put up their core flutes in Wentworth?
I don't know. I doubt it, but
It would have been done by volunteers.
Would have been done by the volleys. But hey,
yeah.
I think these days you need a cherry picker, so they tend to hire. A group that have a cherry picker to get halfway up the pole, so you can.
I assure you,
great work for the Kennards franchises. Hey, but
we've said that in Wentworth in the by-election. That's the way it's done. It's not volunteers. It's done by contractors.
Sure, but now we got to move on here too, because we talked about policy and the policy homework at the start of this segment here. Now we have seen another promise from Anthony Albanese, promising to introduce new laws preventing the Fair Work Commission from ever cutting penalty rates in awards, as Labor tries to drag Opposition Leader Peter Dutton into yet another fight over industrial relations. Now, I mean, everybody knows that Australia has the most complicated industrial relations rules this side of Havana. Darin, how can there ever be any sort of industrial relations reform or reform anywhere if, we go to this thing where we just lock things in and we can never change them?
Tell you what, there'll never be any. If people make speeches talking about sending people back to work, they forget to tell all of their MPs and give them talking points, and then 48 hours later it's a mess, and then 2 weeks later they reverse their policy. Liberals should have had a strong campaign on IR, and they've been thoroughly beaten, and it was an own goal.
Well, they were beaten by, I think, memories of work choices. It goes back to that. But Jason, seriously though, let's take this beyond the party political point here. If you're someone like me who really cares about getting this economy moving and making it more productive, when you do things like this, you are putting roadblocks against productivity, particularly against small businesses, which find the compliance with these IR laws so punishing and in a way that big guys can't deal with. What is the future for any sort of productivity and reform if this is the attitude of our major players?
Zero. So let's be very clear about this. You are absolutely right. Real wages in Australia prior to the Fair Work Act were rising between 5 and 7% a year. That started when the Keating government and the Hawke government deregulated industrial relations law. The Fair Work Act now puts the IR club completely and utterly in control. No one cares about workers in this country. It's all about the industrial relations barristers and the Fair Work Commission that is headed up by the former Labor candidate for McKellar. This is an insider's game. Australian real wages have been stagnated up to 2023, and they have fallen by 12% since the Albanese government got elected. Australians will not be better off until these laws are reformed. And yet, all of that said, and living standards going backwards, it looks like Labor may very well walk away with this election, but too early to tell. Darin Barnett, Jason Falinski, thank you so much. Great to have you both here on the panel and at the desk tonight. Thank you so much.